Okay, welcome to episode 6 of Experience This. How you guys doing?
Great. Happy New Year,
Good.
everyone.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Hopefully this is our first recording of the new year, so hopefully everyone's had a good holiday break. So we got no guests today, which means you're stuck with just the three of us. So we're going to chat about a few stories that have come up over the holidays, a few things to look at in 2023, and just have a general sort of chit chat about the industry. So stories over the holidays. Have you guys come up with anything that sort of jumps out that we should discuss?
Well, the obvious one is China opening up, right? I mean, that is huge. I don't even think we know how huge it is yet, but looking at some of the data that's been coming out, the flights that are getting booked already to not just Asia, but the rest of the world, the visa requests, it's pretty astounding. And I think the world will be different now that China is open for travel. That would be my first thought. What do you guys think?
Is this data real data of bookings, or did that then just get turned back around when everyone demanded negative tests?
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by the question, but the article that I saw that was real bookings was put out by Trip.com, the largest OTA in China, obviously, and they were talking about real bookings that started the day after the Chinese government said, we're going to let you leave. And, you know, I could dig up that article and share some data there, but it was real bookings all over the world.
But the test requirement came out after that, right? So I wonder how much of that's, I wonder if that's gone into reverse now. I'd be interested to see how that's changed now that US, UK, Italy, quite a few others have demanded tests.
It's going to slow it down. It will slow it down a bit, but it's not going to, I mean, it's going to be just the same as it was in other places where we had big COVID upticks. I mean, obviously there's more people that have to be considered, but at the same time, you know, they're going to go through that process. People are going to get it. Then there's going to become, you know, more immunity. And then, you know, and then eventually it's going to start course correcting. And that's when I think we'll really see, you know, we'll really see the numbers start to come. I think for the most part, the Chinese are going to stick pretty close to home. I think they're going to be visiting the APAC destinations, Thailand, Singapore, you know, different parts of Southeast Asia. I don't think we're going to see them going that far away from home initially.
Yeah, from what I've read as well, China itself is a bit of a ghost town right now. Nobody's gone out. It's even quieter than it was with the lockdowns. People are terrified. But I think we're going to do a show in the next couple of weeks on APAC and with a bit of a focus on China as well. So it'll be interesting to get some perspectives from folks based over there.
Yeah, definitely.
Just real quick from the Trip.com article that they released from the morning of December 27th. So right after China said you can travel again. The flights bound for Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong, Japan, and Thailand led the surge. And they were all in triple-digit increases. So it's going to be pretty widespread throughout APAC. And I think, Lori, what you're saying might not impact Europe and North America yet. But there are also signs that might happen. But there's signs.
Right? Triple-digit increases over zero?
Yeah, right. It's pretty much.
I love these COVID stats. You know,
COVID stat coming out. It basically says that December 27th was like 400% jump over December 26th. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. But here's another thing to think about. In 2019, there were about 155 million Chinese that traveled internationally. That's a lot of people, 155 million people. And that went down to 20 million and 25 million in 2020 and 2021. I don't have the data for 22. It's probably still in that same 20 to 30 million range. Where's that going to be for 2023? I mean, what would you guess? You know, between 20 million and 154 million. There's a lot of room there to add a lot of travelers to APAC.
That's my guess.
It'll be between those two numbers?
Correct.
Go way out on that limb.
I'm with you, Christian. Yeah, no, I think it's probably going to follow a similar pattern. I mean, we do have a little bit of history in this now. We can take a look at what happened in the US. We can take a look at what happened in Europe. and maybe get a sense of how things progressed as, the rebound started happening, or the openings started happening. So I think we can apply similar metrics to China and perhaps get an understanding. I don't know what that number is, but
And they've
I
been
did have
locked in for 3 years, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and there's a lot of people who want to get into China because there's a lot of people who have family there that they haven't seen in 3 years. So that's going to be, if you're going to risk going over there right now because of the various cases of COVID they have, or the huge numbers they have, then I think it's going to be because you have family and you haven't seen them in 3 years.
Yeah, I agree. Regardless, it's a great thing they've opened up. I was starting to wonder if they were ever going to open up with this, with this big guy. You never quite know what he's going to do, and he rules everything over there.
Yeah.
A bit of a segue. You guys probably read that I think it's April, I think it's 12th or something, India becomes the most populous country.
I heard that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's an
That doesn't surprise me.
interesting time coming up. I think, China's probably at the end of its fast growth period. They're going back to communism. They're going to cause a problem. Well, we call it a problem with Taiwan. That's happening. I think the US and I think the West moves more towards India. I think a lot of manufacturing is getting moved over there. And I think I see India being the big story for the next couple of decades with, being the most populous. We've known this is going to happen for a long time, but it's becoming more and more important. And I think it becomes a massive part of the travel industry as well as they start to grow. And I think their economy is going to expand quite quickly. It means a lot of more Indians will get a lot more money to travel, especially internationally.
That would actually be an interesting discussion point as well, if we're looking at specific regions of the world to talk about is India. That is a super complicated country to do business in, super difficult to go after business coming out of India because of their various caste systems, the way they work, how many layers there are within different companies, organizations, not an easy target whatsoever. But getting somebody that understands that, how to go after that business would be an interesting conversation to have at some point.
Yeah,
At
we
least
should
from
do a
my
show.
point of view.
We should do a show on India. We'll get a couple of folks in who are experts and have a discussion around that.
Yeah, we certainly know enough. They have an OTA that everyone I'm sure is aware of, Make My Trip, that has been around for years and years now. Very well established and doing great. Public company that started probably 10 years ago as a public company. I bet we could find someone there. Yep.
And Klook does a lot of business in India. So, in terms of like being connected to that opportunity, Klook is going to be one of those connections for people. But the whole world of independent travel is still very new to some of those markets. Even China, it's still very much a group market in a big way. The FIT stuff is growing, but the group business is still huge in China. And the same applies for India, really, because a lot of these people are first-time travelers and they do not know how or want to go off on their own. Yeah, so I think it's an interesting but complicated conversation, one we should definitely have, though.
Yeah. And another topical, I'll push back to you guys in a second. Another topical one is Southwest. They're looking out for a new ResTech solution.
Who's bidding on that project?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure a lot of companies are thinking, I wish I could get into that, but it's probably a bit of a.
I read yesterday that the Southwest flight attendant labor union, they didn't go on strike, but the thing they were complaining about mostly over the last year wasn't their pay, but it was about the automation of scheduling. Like, it was way out in front. This was not a surprise to anyone associated with Southwest at all. So much so that the pilots and the flight attendants were like, just fix this instead of giving us more money. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I saw that. I think it's the first time I ever remember seeing a union talking about adopting technology or automation. And it's an interesting angle, which is great. We'll see how much automation they want.
How long do you think, you're a tech guy, how long would it take to go into Southwest and look at scheduling software that they require, maybe go look at what some of the other airlines use and implement something? I mean, that's a huge project. That's not going to happen in 3, 6, 9 months.
No, that takes years. And I think also, like, Southwest is so domestic. And, you know, there's certain routes that they fly that are just, there's a constant like change of staff. And as you said, I mean, everyone knows now what the reason was for the crazy debacle, but it's interesting. I was listening today or reading today about, you know, airlines and their and kind of the struggles they had over 2022 and what was on their list, and you know, a lot of things that you would imagine, whether it be the state of the economy or hiring and retention, just a number of things. But apparently one of the big things that's missing is innovation. That airlines, and this comes from their, you know, earnings call, airlines are not talking about innovation. They're not talking about disruption. They're really just trying to keep it together and figure out how to, you know, to just do better with what they're working on. They're not really looking at, you know, what should we do to kind of disrupt this space. So I thought that was interesting. And I have to say one more thing, which I thought was hilarious. Okay. So talking about Southwest, and, you know, you saw all the pictures of people with luggage and laying all over airports. Okay, I don't know if you heard about this new startup. It's called Air B.
Yeah.
It is a new airport tech that brings an inflatable bed to your gate, uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to predict delays. Now, what I love, first of all, I thought it was hilarious, but the free version is that you get an uninflated air mattress. If you want it inflated, you have to pay for it. So the upgrade is that you get an automatic pump or you get a manual pump. You can get slippers. But this is one of the new startups that's coming as a result of this, and I just thought that was just.
How about a blanket and pillow? Does he upgrade it?
Well, it's got to be in there, right? You've got to have that. But talk about the ancillary opportunities.
Right. Is that going to succeed?
Hey, Airbnb was one of the worst ideas you've ever heard in your life 15 years ago, right? And
yeah, okay. Well, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see.
Do you think the guys at Airbnb are going to have a problem with the name of this new company?
So what's the name? What's the name?
Airb.
Airb. I'm sure there's a lawsuit getting kicked up.
Yeah.
If it ever goes that far.
So what else have you guys been thinking about over the festive period?
Well, I was looking at, I've been thinking a lot about corporate travel, especially since we had that episode where we spoke with Fabio and Joe. And I don't think we've aired that episode yet, right? That's episode 5 is still to come, from what I believe.
Yeah.
And I just think the opportunity is significant in the space, especially for experience operators, is this idea of corporate travel. But then along with that, I was sort of thinking about blurred travel. I'd like to know what you guys think of blurred travel, otherwise known as bleisure. I think I've heard a couple of names attached to it, but what do you think of that?
Bruce?
I mean, I've stayed away from corporate travel most of my career, except for a very short stint doing some consulting for someone. So I'm not an expert in corporate. I know corporate is going to have a real struggle coming back. There was an article in Skip that said, 75-80% is the new norm that corporate travel should expect. And this kid says it must be true, right? As far as bleisure, yeah, I mean, that, like, how's that new though? Like, anyone ever that was going on a corporate trip, they could always add a couple days before or after, and all of a sudden it's a bleisure trip. I'm just not sure how that's new and different.
Well, I think it's new where it's connected to the remote workplace, right? And now you can take an extra day or two either side of your trip and kind of work from the hotel or work from the destination.
Is that leisure or is that more of remote work?
I think it overlaps. The other overlap, I think, which is really interesting. I don't see it. A lot of people talk about this, but the idea of the corporate getaways, right? Now that a lot of the world is remote, there is a need for company get-togethers.
Yep.
And we all know that's a trend, and that's not going to go away. I don't see a ton of people in the space catering to that. I'm sure it's the group travel people that should be catering to that. I don't see a lot of people advertising that product as part of this corporate getaway. And I think a lot of large companies, yeah, maybe they're a bit more linked to sort of to the larger hotels and spaces and that kind of thing. But there's a ton of small companies, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, up to 100 people that also need places to go as a getaway, and they want to do fun stuff as part of their corporate trip.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have a buddy who is a tour guide for a pretty active tour operator here in Boulder, Denver area. And almost all his recent work has been team building. Exactly that, getting teams of 10 to 30 people outdoors doing different things. Some of it's the classic, high ropes course, but other things that is all about team building outside, having a blast. So I agree with you, Christian. That's a niche that in our industry and experiences should definitely get a lot more focus than I think it has right now.
Yeah, I think team building was always a thing, but now I think it gets linked to that actual work event as well. So it's not just the team building, but also let's sit down in a conference room for 3 days and discuss our strategy for the year or whatever needs to be.
Yeah, I really believe that this thing is going to just expand. I think the opportunities are also going to grow with it. As you said, Christian, if you think about a company that, maybe used to have people traveling back and forth to their headquarters regularly, and now they're not doing that as much. And there's more of an opportunity to get your team together, and whether that's somewhere close to your headquarters or whether that's an offsite, there's going to likely be more of that. There'll probably be more opportunity around, trade shows where the whole team comes together at one time. I do think that, yes, the idea that you can, you've got a work trip, you can tack on a couple of days is not new, Bruce. But what is new is that now that idea that you can work from anywhere. I mean, it used to be a situation where if you weren't in the office, there probably should be a really good reason for that, right? Well, I'm going on a trip, business trip, and I'm going to take a couple of days PTO and spend in wherever. Now it's, well, actually, I have to fly out to the New York office. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work from there for a while now that I'm there. So the expectation that you can work from anywhere is just so much more now a part of our culture that I do think the bleisure thing is just going to become more of an opportunity. And I think it's important for experience operators to consider how some of these new travel behaviors are going to bring them business. And that might mean working with companies, big companies, understanding, what they're doing. Is there an opportunity for team building or experiential, team growth or whatever the case might be? But I feel like there's more to be said here. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch this space. And I think that operators should 100% be looking at it and starting to get really familiar with
what
world.
Just came to my mind. I mean, I've been all about distribution, digital distribution for decades now and thinking about it, talking about it. And you just hit something that I had not thought about or talked about based on what you just said, which is, why wouldn't an experience creator go and knock on the door of large corporates in their neighborhood and say, hey, when you have your team here, forget the team building side, just you're bringing people into the headquarters, they can take advantage of our tours. Turn them on to our food tour, our walking tour, our attraction, our this or that. And here's our information. You don't have to pay commission to those corporates. They just want good things to turn their employees onto. Like, think about that distribution strategy and give them some kind of, booking tech, just like you give a concierge. And those corporates aren't looking for any money under the table or over the table, right? That's a really interesting topic, I think.
They all want that. Every corporate wants that. It's just not easy. And now the way to book that is to talk to someone in the company, make a bunch of phone calls, work out how group bookings work, and it becomes messy. You can make it easy for that company just to bring in 10, 20 people on your food tour without them having to think too much. I think there's massive potential. I think we don't focus as an industry enough on making things easy for the customer. I think on the FIT, on the individuals, we do. But I think on the group side, as Laurie started with on this, there's a ton of potential for just making ourselves really easy to work with.
And I don't think it's even group, right? Like, so some of the res techs have built software that they can hand over to a concierge. And then anyone that's in that city has access, easy, clickable, bookable access for FIT bookings in their city. That same software could live with any corporate in that same city. Now, is that enough because it's only tied to one res tech? Or does it need to be tied to an OTA, or does it need to be tied to a channel manager, blah, blah, blah. But you're right, it has to have tech, because you don't want your, exec administrator on the phone calling, oh, hey, I have 3 people that want to go on a food tour tomorrow, right? You just want it easy. But it sounds like it's a lot easier than Southwest figuring out their problems.
Yeah. So consider this, putting the big group opportunity aside for a minute. Consider that, number one, the idea that you can work from anywhere is definitely a selling point now, right? If you're looking for a job, a lot of people that's in there, kind of, here's my list of requirements. Let's say you got a big company, big company, offices all over the place, and you have a total digital nomad, remote work from anywhere kind of thing, and that's a major thing in the organization. Why wouldn't you also then extend that to have, your own internal website or, platform that allows your employees to experience activities all over the place? Now, you could say that sort of exists right now with somebody like an EBG that has tickets at work and their employees get discounts. So they already have that. And there's a lot of companies that utilize that portal, and that's great. But I'm just thinking specifically of extending the idea of creating this environment around the digital nomad, or whatever you want to call it, and essentially offering them more than just kind of a work from home, and expanding on that. But Joe sort of went into that a little bit as well. He was saying, you've got to call, or not call, but reach out to these various, people that are in charge at these organizations that are even in your hometown or wherever, and that, just try to start, kind of a conversation that way.
I think that could be an interesting future show, because I think we're not necessarily talking about groups. We're just talking about using corporate as another distribution channel for individual travel. And that could be an interesting conversation. I mean, who's doing the tech for that? And how, bring on a corporate, bring on a tech company that can enable that. It's just an idea. What other future shows are you thinking about, Christian?
I'm just thinking about this now. I just love the space around the remote group. I was thinking of Airbnb when Laurie said, the companies that come fully remote. I know Airbnb does experiences, but they need this tool where they can go and book a local attraction or local experience in a local city, which is probably not an Airbnb experience, if we're honest, right? It's a bigger group. Anyway, yeah, future shows we're looking at, Bruce. We're doing a influencer show or a content creator show in a couple of weeks, just to talk about that market. That's always an interesting discussion. That links us to lots of other areas to discuss in the future. I think we're going to have a lot of discussions around the sort of loyalty slash frequency problem slash hopper solution. That maybe sounds a little bit random, but I think these things all tie together. The sort of the super app and the frequency problem and the loyalty is the biggest problem in travel. Hopper, I think, is the one that we speak about the most, that's in that space trying to solve these things in a single app.
Have you heard of Travala?
Sorry, Laurie?
You heard of Travala? Just learned about them today. TREV as in TREV as in Victor, ALA, Travala. I think they're somewhere in they might be in the UK. I'm not 100% sure where they're based. They're basically big on the whole loyalty, conversation. They use many different forms of currency, or allow customers to utilize many different forms of currency, including crypto. They are, the way that they work with their loyalty, or the way they've built their loyalty program, is around NFTs. So, you buy a tiger NFT. Oh, there you go. I didn't know what you were doing. Okay, it's TRAVALA. Yeah. So if you go to Explore NFT, Bruce, you'll see how they're using this travel tiger NFTs that you buy. And with each particular version, you get additional loyalty points, rewards, that kind of thing. They all giveaways. They're all centered around this travel tiger NFT. But anyway, very interesting model. I've never heard of them before, but you can see they have a lot of benefits. It's very similar to the Hopper kind of model, I think.
I feel like they're Asia focused. Yeah.
No, I think they're US and Europe. I feel like you're trying to wind me up, Laurie, with this NFT stuff, but I think it was a couple of good years for crypto and NFT. I think, unfortunately, that's now dominated by all this noise and all the failures, and I think these companies are going to have to start detaching themselves from Web3. I think there's a good solution there, but I think if you start promoting these NFT cartoons as a loyalty thing, people are going to run a mile, because there's too much Ponzi in that space. Which is a shame, because there is a potential good solution, but loyalty doesn't need to be fixed with an NFT. It was a solution looking for a problem. Loyalty can be fixed with just a centralized database, which works perfectly well. Loyalty doesn't need to be interoperable with different The problem for me with loyalty is Marriott's got a loyalty program to get you to stay at the Marriott. I think that's how it works. And they don't particularly want to work with the Hilton. Do they own each other yet? No. And that's the whole point. A lot of these NFTs, it'll be great. You can just transfer your points to an NFT, and now you can use your points at both, which is exactly defeats the purpose, Marriott or for Hilton.
Well, I definitely will look forward to that conversation, because I feel like the whole loyalty is something that the experiences industry is going to have a tough time cracking, unless you're a big company. I mean, it's, how do you do it if you're not a big company like Hopper, for instance? And Hopper is still young, but it's grown so quickly. And by the way, I think I did hear a prediction that Capital One was going to buy Hopper this year. Skiff said that. I don't know. What do you think of that?
Interesting.
I
didn't see that. I know they work very tightly together. I mean, I think Hopper is sort of the Capital One partner, right, for travel. They
And
needed.
they just sunk a boatload more money into Hopper as well.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Which let's assume that was a down round. I think it was a lot of money, but I assume their valuation's gone the same direction as everyone else.
I'm not sure we could speculate that was a down round. I mean, they've been raising money for 10 years, and every time they do, everyone scratches their head. What are they doing with all that money? But in the meantime, they become like the third largest OTA after Expedia Booking or Booking Expedia. And they're doing a lot of different things. So I don't know. You want to call
it a down round? How can you do an up round? Right? Everyone got wiped out by 50 to 75% last year. Why are Hopper so special that their evaluation didn't also collapse?
Because they're not an OTA. They're
even more so. I mean,
they're a fintech.
Yeah, they've been wiped out the same as everyone else.
Huh?
Fintechs have been wiped out the same as everyone else.
That's actually another good topic for a future episode is fintech. Oh boy, yeah, that would be a good one.
Yeah. Lots of good subjects here.
Yeah, I've never heard of Travala. You know what the main thing I got out of it so far? I need to contact them about being a sponsor for Arrival.
That's where, Bruce, your mind is always on that dollar side.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it.
I thought this is great, Laurie. We could be Bruce's lead gen. What's the commission we're getting? 30%?
Oh, that's negotiable.
Yeah.
That's negotiable. Yeah.
Oh, it's negotiable, Christian.
Yeah.
40% then. Brilliant.
Yeah, this is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all right. So having talked a little bit about what we see coming down the road, we've done 5 episodes. Did you have a favorite point or highlight from any of those episodes, or was there something that you were like, no way, I'd never want to talk about this again? Or any thoughts on that?
I think there's some really cool stuff we did and we could talk about, but for me, as a different kind of topic, is the passion economy, passion travel that Dan Christian talked about with what he's doing with Dharma. And that to me, we've been talking about lots of different kinds of travel within the experience economy, but the passion economy, like I will travel to follow my favorite music band. I mean, just think of the Deadheads, right? Although they probably didn't pay a lot of money to do that travel, but they were traveling all over the country, if not the world, to follow the Grateful Dead. Same thing on sports teams, etc. So I'm putting a lot of stock into that. I think that was a great show. Dan Christian is awesome. And we'll certainly have him back to talk about anything he wants to talk about, in my mind.
What do you think, Christian?
I'd say it's similar for me. I like the cast where we have a conversation where we bring in sort of new ideas and different perspectives that are not just the standard old way of doing business, because I think the industry is changing. I always enjoy the influencer discussion, not because I'm a TikToker or anything. That's where the eyeballs are now. So that's something which needs to be solved, and there isn't a solution right now to get people from these platforms to booking. So I always enjoy those discussions where we have a sort of a different perspective. I think from what Bruce just said, that's the same thing. The passion economy it's at the top of the funnel. It's the reason you book, and it leads to a different booking experience potentially, right?
Well, I love that it leads to, I mean, it really covers a number of different points. Number one, it gets the customer to where they want to be that much quicker, because they're going after something they already love doing, and then deciding on maybe the destination after that point, or the trip or whatever. But they start out with the core product, which is what they already want to do, like seeing the Deadhead, or seeing the Dead, excuse me. But it also brings the customers, right? The creators, the influencers are bringing their own customer base to some degree. So, I like the idea that it comes with a distribution opportunity at the same time. one more thing I just want to say is I love this one point when we were talking about self-guided tours, and Christian, you brought up the idea of an app, obviously GPS enabled, where you could be in like yellow, what did you say? Not Yellowstone, Yosemite. And you'd be, kind of driving around, and then all of a sudden you'd get an alert that said, don't forget about, this waterfall on the right-hand side. And I thought, now that's a really cool idea. I like that idea. So yeah, I think that may be your next project, perhaps.
I haven't been to Yosemite for a long time, but I'm always ready for a trip there. Well, lots of stuff to discuss. I think, like we said before, we're always open for ideas as well. If anyone's listening, they've got a unique perspective, even from outside of the direct industry. I think it's great to have people maybe from e-commerce or from the hotel or air side that can give us different perspectives, so that we're not caught in the echo chamber, which can happen with any industry. So I think anybody that's got an interesting topic, please reach out to us. I'm going to go back to focusing on AI, which is all I can think about these days. There's so many possibilities there. I'm sure we'll do more shows in the future on GPT and AI as well.
Well, we have to have one show just on that at some point. But
yeah, we do.
TBD. Yeah. TBD on GPT.
TBD.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Any final points for today? If not, we'll wrap up.
No.
Good.
No. Looking forward to the year ahead.
Happy 2023, everybody, and watch this show grow. That's the idea.
Yeah. Happy New Year to everyone, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.